Colorado Springs, you might not know this, but is a mecca for the military. Love it or hate it, it really is. And so we just want to make sure that you know a couple things. This is not going to be wild, but a couple things before PCSing here. We're both veterans, part of the Berisford Group. He is the Berisford man. But we're both veterans, we both PCS, we both understand the process, and we know what military buyers are typically looking for when they're, well, looking to buy a home and when they're looking to relocate because they've gotten those magical orders. Let me tell you, when you get orders from somewhere like Cannon Air Force Base, Clovis, New Mexico, super hot spot, to Colorado Springs, Colorado, it is life-changing. It's a whole different experience.
Sun shining on you, birds are chirping.
You're like, now you have options. Down in, I'm so sorry for all of my friends at Canyon that are watching this video. I was there for 7.5 years, so I only have so much sympathy for you. But when you're looking for a house down there, it's basically like, you can look at this neighborhood, and that's like pretty much all your options. But you come up here, there's 5 military bases, there's tons of things to do. There's a bajillion and a half neighborhoods, there's new developments, there's new builds, there's apartments, there's condos, there's all these things. And so it helps to have a little bit of clarity when you come up here, right?
I agree with all of that. All of that, 100%.
Yeah.
So knowing exactly where you're going could play into where you might want to live at. I guess depending on what you want to do too. But like Kyle said, 5 major military installations in the spring. So there's all services. I know guys that have been in the Navy that have been stationed in Colorado Springs for the joint stuff here. So no matter what branch you're in, there's a good chance you might come to Colorado Springs sometime in the future. And what installation you're going to be at is going to have a big impact on where you might want to live, things you might want to be involved in Colorado Springs for sure.
I'm going to take that a step further and say that it pretty much is going to have a major impact because, so the 5 installations, right? So you've got USAFA, the Air Force Academy, that's all the way up north. And then you've got Cheyenne Mountain. Who goes there? I don't know, but somebody goes there and does secret stuff. Fort Carson, which is down south. Peterson, which is east of that, but also down south.
Peterson Space Base, I believe.
Space Force Base, yes. PSFB. And then you also have Schriever. So Peterson, by the way, is also has Northcom. So all of Northern Command is also there. So there's a lot. That's why you'll have foreigners, you'll have Navy people, all branches of the military will go there for freaking sure. And then you have Schriever that's out east of that. It's also a little space base. So the first thing that I would do, truthfully, is when you figure out where you're going, pull up the old Google Maps or something and look where that base is. Because we actually, my fiance, she kind of made this mistake when she moved up here. She was under the impression that she was going to be working mostly at Peterson. So she got a house right next to Peterson. Turns out she goes there maybe once a week, sometimes every other week. Most of her work is at USAFA up at the academy. Where we live, because we live out in Claremont Ranch, right next to Peterson, it's like a 30-minute drive every morning.
Because you're diagonal across town.
And it's not a good 30-minute drive. No. And after work, it's closer to 45 minutes because of all the traffic. So if you're at Fort Carson, unless you're just hell-bent on living in the woods and you got hella money, you probably don't want to live in Black Forest. That probably doesn't make a ton of sense because that's going to be super, super far from where you live. Pull it up. And then, now, don't slow down your whole housing process, but talk to a realtor and be like, hey, I'm coming out there. I'm going to be stationed here, right? We'll work on those things with you, but understanding which neighborhoods make sense. What's important to you? That's a great question that your realtor can ask is the commute important? Or what does your spouse do? Does your spouse work? Or if it's that you just really care about the school district, right? That might drive you to live further from. But it's just understanding that there is, for a fact, going to be give or take. Because even if you lived in the Springs 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I was stationed here in 2010. Doesn't matter. It's different. It's grown.
And that's a big key point because when you look at that Google map, as you definitely should, you might see a little neighborhood up here and you're like, oh my gosh, you put it in the Google directions and it says it's a 40-minute drive. And you find another spot that looks like it's farther away, and mileage-wise it is, but it's only a 20-minute drive. There's a huge difference in the different parts of Colorado Springs as far as commute times based on what the road system is, and it's kind of a convoluted road system in some ways in Colorado Springs. So definitely, like, talk with somebody, boots on the ground, make sure that you're looking in areas that are going to satisfy your commute time. And like Kyle said, your spouse, significant other, they might be working on the other end of town, so then you've got to have that compromise and just... There's a lot to think about when you're trying to figure out what installation I'm going to be at and what communities I should really be taking a look at.
Yeah, and typically when we meet with people that are new buyers, we do run kind of through these questions, right? Like, does your spouse work, kids, what's their situation with school, what are they trying to do, those types of things. But also, I care a lot about living near a dog park, right? Because I have a couple dogs and I want open space for them to go play. Other things might just be parks for your kids, or you want to live near open space. So like, we can narrow those things down. It's not like you're just going to give up at all, but you really need to understand, like, if you're at USAFA and you're living in Claremont Ranch, like
Not fully
you're gonna
convenient.
be a little upset.
Yeah. And another thing, if it's your last duty assignment, maybe you're coming to Colorado Springs, you lined your career up perfectly, and you're going to do your last assignment here and then punch out, either retire or ETS out of the military. Then maybe you can flex on that neighborhood. You're like, hey, I can drive a little bit farther. Maybe I can drive 45 minutes for a couple months or a couple years, whatever it is, because I know I want to stay in Colorado Springs and I want to buy that perfect house right now. That's kind of what my wife did. We moved up into Black Forest. She was still working out at Schriever, which is 35-minute drive probably. And she did that for, I think, like 6 months from the new house. So there's just a lot of factors to think through when you think about drive times and where the heck you want to live at.
And when you're considering, this goes for anybody, not just military people, obviously, but when you're considering, you want to understand a little bit about the housing. Duh. You got to know about the housing market in the area. And Colorado Springs is, well, it actually can be kind of summed up almost, maybe you'll disagree, but it can almost be summed up south to north, but a price graph next to it increasing south to north.
Roughly,
right?
yeah.
Generally speaking. Now, someone's going to say, well, you're an idiot because I know that the Broadmoor has homes for $1.5 million. Yeah, wow, thank you. You are so wise. I really appreciate you putting that in
general,
comments.
though.
But in general,
yeah.
Homes get much more expensive as you go north and you get towards Northgate and Briargate and Woodmore and like Black Forest,
Monument,
right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
The other thing is you'll also find Colorado Springs has, I dare say strategically, but it has incrementally expanded, right? So you'll find like pockets of homes that like, these homes seem to all have been built between 1995 and 2010.
Because they were.
Because they were.
They all look
And
the
then
same.
you like you go like across like a main thoroughfare and you're like, oh, these houses seem to be built between 2005 and 2012. Because they were. So those pockets also happen very often.
Definitely 100%. And then you'll have those, a lot of people like older housing. So you'll go across that major thoroughfare the other direction, and now stuff was built in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So it's very pocketized. That's a new word. There's pockets of homes of varying age, and you'll find that throughout all of Colorado Springs. So are there nice homes in all parts of Colorado Springs? I think there are. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Different price points. So no matter what your BAH, which is everybody does this, let's be honest. As soon as you get your orders, you look and you're like, hey, what kind of house can I get? So you look at your BH rate. BH, I'm guessing it's probably more here than Clovis. Am I right on that? Just a little bit more. So once you see what your BH rate is and you go through all that mental math of like, is that my max? Do I want to spend some of my other money? What do I want to do for my total housing budget? That alone, combined with the first thing we talked about, is really going to help you dial in a few specific areas that you typically want to look in.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Now, I'm just going to say for myself right now, like, we live out on the east side of town and different strokes for different folks. Everyone's got their own preferences. It's not my preference, right? Like, because when you talk about kind of the general feel of things, when you go towards the east side of Colorado Springs, it is a little bit further away from the mountains. Obviously, it's like, now you're like, you look out that direction, you're looking towards Kansas, but you've got good views. You can see the
Great
entire
views of the
front
beach,
range,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I step out into my street and I have this gorgeous view of Pikes Peak, and every morning, especially right now, like it's like pink and kind of this like magenta color during the sunrise. And it's pretty magical. I'm not gonna lie, it's beautiful. There's also way less traffic out there. We've got we have a grocery store like in our neighborhood. So like we have the things that we need to survive over there. But definitely when you come to like the west side, there's a big, generally easy line to find, which is I-25, big highway that runs north and south. When you go on the west side of that, that feels like you're like, oh, I'm in Colorado.
I'm in Colorado. That was a mandatory thing for me. When I moved here, still on active duty, moved to Colorado Springs, I only looked at houses west of I-25. At the time, I was climbing a lot. I still love to be outside now, but even more so then. And man, like I didn't even look at a house east of I-25. That was just a big thing for me. I was like, I know I want to be on the west side of town.
Well, when we moved up here, she was still down at Cannon. I was deployed, and it was in 2021 when she bought her house. So like we had put offers on houses, and so at that point it was just like, this one looks good.
I'm trying to get a house right now.
Yeah, no kidding. We got a video of it. It was like, okay, yeah, I think we could do something with this. Boom, and then we ended up in the house. And like generally, I mean, we like the house, but our flavor is that we want to be on the west side. I like that feel of Colorado where you're like under the mountains. There's a little bit more trees, potential for wildlife.
Closer to do those, outdoor things up in the mountains.
Yeah. What about up north? What's the feel up north?
So up north varies a lot, I think. If you're Black Forest up north, it feels very rural. And I know there's a lot of folks that get ready to retire from the military. They get stationed here that try to move into the Black Forest area because they're like, hey, I'm going to be here when I retire. I want my space, yada, yada. So the Black Forest area, very rural. And then a lot of the major development where Colorado Springs is really growing is on the north side of town. So Interquest and I-25, Northgate and I-25, that's where kind of all the major commercial development is happening right now. So it's where, I hate to use that as an example, but it's where the new In-N-Out is. It's where Shields is, a huge new outdoor store. So
Top Golf,
yeah.
Top Golf, In-N-Out, and Shields.
What else do you need in life, right? So that's the north side of town. Like Kyle mentioned, home prices are a little bit higher. Homes are typically a little bit bigger on the north side of town. A lot of families, that live on the north side. So it definitely has a lot different feel. I think probably it has a more family feel than like downtown Colorado Springs. Definitely has kind of that, hey, I'm in my 20s, maybe I'm single, maybe a new couple. That's probably a better vibe. North end of town is definitely more family feel from my perspective for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. But, I will say like I like the downtown Colorado Springs area a lot. And it's like those more classic style homes, not to be confused with classic homes, which is a new build, but they're like classic style homes. You have kind of those older looks and those older feels, but like the neighborhoods are cool, but the lots, I mean, it's a downtown area, right? Like they're
small.
They're typically really small lots. So, and obviously like in the downtown area, the cost of living is going to be high. Downtown area is in the south side. So going back to my south to north price, give me a break.
Yeah, there's pockets.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
So, but it does. This is probably the most popular question that we get is like, well, what about the cost of living? And so, if you go onto Forbes.com, there's actually a pretty good like cost of living calculator, and I encourage you to look at it. But a couple things that you do need to know, and this one really makes me mad. I kind of hate this, but gas here. Actually, I looked this up recently. We're like the 5th most expensive state.
Really?
Yep. And they're trying to like manage it. Now, part of it is because as of right now,
there's that place
mid-March,
closed.
Yep, there was a huge refinery that like temporarily closed for a couple months and it's still not open. And so like prices kind of shot up. But I went on a hunting trip down to New Mexico last month and gas was like $1.20 cheaper down there. And I drive a diesel truck, super manly and stuff,
It's an eco diesel.
It's eco
diesel. Don't get too excited.
The Air Force, we got to keep it classy. Anyway, but that was like super frustrating. And part of the reason the gas is so much more expensive up here is because it's in the middle of freaking country. And so it's just longer to ship. That's really like the main reason we don't have a ton of like locally sourced gas. So especially while that refinery is closed, it just kind of puts us in a dark spot. But
overall though, cost of living, when you look at everything, I bet if you take fuel and housing out of it, because housing, we know housing in Colorado, it's higher than where it is in a lot of the country. But when you take that out of it and you look at the other big sections you talk about, like healthcare, although if you're military, you're not really quite as concerned about that. Healthcare, transportation, which probably includes food. Yeah, that's the other thing I was thinking of. Sustenance. I think the scale they use is average is 100. So average cost of living across the country is 100. I think Colorado's like 102 or 103. I think.
Oh.
So it's because we have some things that are less expensive, but then the housing is more expensive and transportation is a little bit more expensive.
That's fair. But it's kind of hard to gauge right now because everything feels expensive.
Everything feels
In
pricey,
fact, I'll say this, you'll probably, everyone knows that eggs have gotten more expensive. Well, in Colorado, they've gotten exponentially more expensive because Colorado passed a law that all eggs have to be...
Chickens have to be taken care of.
Yeah, they have to be like free range. So there's no more like cheapo eggs anymore. Now everyone's just bending the rules and saying that they're chickens.
What qualifies as a free range chicken?
Yeah, they've got all the qualifications. I am totally sure. So, anywho, I'll just speak from my experience moving up here. So, I was in Utah and then in Florida and then in New Mexico. And I was in New Mexico for a long, long time. But people have... I feel like I could go a bajillion different ways with this, but I'll just say that my general experience of moving up here has been absolutely fantastic. I freaking love it. There are so many days, no kidding, where I'm driving around and I just am like, wow, I can't believe that I live here. This is awesome. I love Colorado Springs. I really, really love this place. It's beautiful. There's tons to do. It's growing. I like that we're on a path of growth right now.
Yeah.
Personally, there's like the annoyance of some extra construction, but I feel like we're just constantly getting new restaurants. They're revitalizing kind of the downtown area. They're trying to bring more like big shows and concerts and stuff down here so that it's not always like we're just reliant on Denver, but we can do kind of our own thing here.
Yeah.
I really love the Colorado Springs area. It's been great.
I think that goes back to the point you made earlier about if you were stationed here previously or visited Colorado Springs a long time ago, say 10, 15, 20 years ago, it is not the same. Because my experience when I moved here in 2005 was not that good. I moved here and I went to school. I'm from the Midwest originally, went to school at Colorado State. So I was familiar with Colorado. I loved Fort Collins, northern Colorado, and then did my Army thing. And I moved from Germany here. And I loved Germany, had a blast there. It's beautiful. And I remember driving off of I-25. I got off of North Academy Boulevard, the north side, and started driving through town. And I thought, where in the am I getting stationed at? Like it was not that great. There was not a lot to do. There were parts of town. There was a lot of the Colorado Springs that had not been revitalized then. So I didn't really honestly enjoy it that much when I first moved here. Then you kind of get to know like the little sub areas that kind of fit with what you like to do and your hobbies and stuff. So it grew on me pretty quick. But man, when I first drove into town, I did not have that reaction. I was not happy about it. But now, fast forward, however many years that is, 17 years later, Colorado Springs has changed a ton. There's a ton to do. And I can't think of anybody that I know, so a lot of friends in the military that have gotten reassigned here, assigned for the first time to Colorado Springs that don't like it. Everybody seems to really enjoy it now.
Yeah, it's a pretty good place. I mean, listen, again, for context, I was in Clovis, New Mexico.
Look that up on a map because nobody knows where it's at.
I was in Clovis, New Mexico, not the cool part of New Mexico, for 7.5 years. And it was like, it's like when they trick you and they're like, okay. So I went to flight school and they're like, okay, now you have the opportunity to choose your aircraft. And what you want to look at is, do I choose the mission or do I choose the location?
And you messed up.
Yeah.
I won't say messed up.
In some respects, I kind of messed up because I was like, well, I don't care I'll live anywhere. I don't care. And I had a great mission. And I did some cool things and man, that was great. But 7.5 years there, boy, that wears on you. But man, it makes me so appreciative to be in a really great place like this.
Awesome.
Now, last thing that I'll say though is that like make sure that you're looking at those numbers, like your BAH and stuff like that, because it as of late, it has gotten very, very difficult for like younger E4s, E5s to be able to afford housing out here, right? Because like when you do find homes that match and that fit in that BAH range, a a lot of times it's like townhomes or condos. Well, those then have their HOA. So like even if that place was affordable, that HOA, like it can sometimes like knock you just outside of what your BAH is. And that kind of sucks.
It's on the rental side too. You know, I mean, it's like Kyle said, if you're, you know, looking at that little bit lower BH number than what you would hoped it would be, man, like renting is even tough right now. So there's definitely options out there, but a key thing is just whoever it is, we'd love to talk to you, obviously, but whoever it is, talk to somebody in the local area that knows the market that can really point you in the right direction just to make sure you're set up for success, whether you decide to rent or buy, whatever it is. Just talk to somebody, like I said earlier, boots on the ground that really knows the area. I think it's the bottom line.
Yeah, it'll just make it that much easier. We have lenders that we trust that specialize in the VA loan and making that happen. Obviously, being military guys, we've used it both personally and professionally. So we have a lot of experience with that as well. So if you need any help, or if you know anybody that's PCSing here, or to be honest, if you know anybody that's PCSing, period,
in general,
even if they're not coming here, but you just want to make sure that they're set up, you've got a young LT that's PCSing somewhere, let us know and we can hook them up wherever it is that they're going and make sure that they're like in good hands. Because this is the last thing I'm going to say. There's a lot of just shitty people. God damn it. There's just a lot of sucky people out there that, like, I cannot tell you. I swear every industry, especially in the real estate industry, they're like, man, I really want to tap into the military market, especially in Colorado Springs. Yeah, because there's 5 military bases. And it's like, even if the market's bad, we know that people are going to PCS, right? And so everyone's like, I really want to break into the military market. Well, stop taking advantage of them.
They get that military specialist little thing after their name.
And they're like, well, I knew somebody. I had a really good friend that was in the military. I'm really passionate. I'm really patriotic. And maybe that's true. Or maybe they're raking you over the coals.
Maybe it's not.
So anyway, we won't do that. We'll help you out. And if you have any other questions about Colorado Springs, our number's down below, our email's down below. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to help, happy to answer any questions about Colorado Springs and or the VA loan in general. And be on the lookout because the VA ebook is dropping soon. Let's go.
Till next time.